The biggest danger to any brand is a new head of marketing or CMO, because the real credibility for a brand is consistency.
Welcome to Ben on Brand. My guest today is John Miles. He runs the New Zealand Marketing Association and has just written the book, Sod It, Just Do It. You've got your Digital Day Out
Got
shirt
my
on.
DDO shirt on from 2023. It was a ripper, and even a bigger year this year. We got 4 international speakers, including the global head of creative from Dentsu from New York, and Andrew Tyndall's going to be here. Yeah, so it's going to be a ripper.
So you've just released a new book.
It's something I've never done before. I'm just learning as I go, and I've never been on the tools for social before. I mean, I'm the old codger in the corner. People always do these things for me usually.
Show us the cover. Tell us about the color. Tell us about the brand that is Sod It, Just Do It.
I really wanted to get on the speaking circuit. So I thought the only way I can do it is if I own something. So I thought, why don't I write a book? Nearly 40 odd years in marketing and brand and strategy, and I am reasonably good at it. And I thought, well, that's the logical thing. So, of course, I didn't do that at all, for the simple reason being that there's lots of very bright people like Ritson and Seth Godin and all of those luminaries. And I think the market was also oversaturated. So I thought, well, what am I good at? I've always been known as being very decisive and getting shit done. I've designed the whole book to be in a as you'd expect a marketer to do it. To be true to my whole decision-making framework. The book's only 92 pages. Business books are 300 or 400 pages. Yeah, but they take 30 pages to make one point. The way it's structured is you can turn to any page and you'll get something out of it. People's attention spans aren't as good. Brand story behind it is to give people information in bite-sized chunks and not make it fluffy. How can you have a book, a self-help book, without a diagram? So I created one in the decision tree, and people started using it and saying, this is really helpful. And I think we're going to talk about it later. When you're going through big decisions, especially in work, my decision tree can help brands be a lot more interesting and a lot less bland.
Ben on Brand is about brand, so it's also about personal brands. Tell me about brand John.
I've always been known as being quite cheeky and irreverent. And as I mentioned in there, as one of my mates reminded me that when we were in London many years ago, it got me thrown in a rubbish bin. And so my board have often said my secret power is my enthusiasm. So I suppose my brand has always been about being enthusiastic and passionate. TRA did a survey on us a few years ago, and they said, MA is the most passionate organisation in the country. My personal brand flows through into my team. I've got a fabulous team who are always enthusiastic about everything they do. We actually just want to help people be better in their jobs. I'm fortunate that my personality is such that I'm a pretty good chief flag waver. So I think for my personal brand, I'm known as a hustler. I'm known as someone who can come up with very good creative, could be a very good creative problem solver. And I think I've shown that time and time again with various things, and some of those little stories are in Sod It, Just Do It.
The book opens with a very specific claim about indecisiveness being an epidemic. What are you observing there?
All the boffins like the Harvard Business and McKinsey's, and the cost of inertia, they reckon in the United States is $3.3 billion. Companies believe that if they made decisions quicker, they could increase their bottom line by 3%. 70% of executive time is spent in meetings. Managers say are unproductive and don't get anywhere. I just see people overthinking shit all the time, rather than just saying, what's the best that can happen? What's the worst that can happen? Why are you still thinking about it? Just go sod it, just do it.
You led the New Zealand Marketing Association through COVID. The experience was very face-to-face. In COVID, you lost 2 of 3 income streams. You were
Correct.
told to cut costs.
Yeah.
But You asked a different question.
Stage one of the decision-making process is ensuring that the decision that you're making is actually the thing that needs to be decided on, because often it's not. So what happened with us, I mean, I'd only been in the job 4 months, and I was coming to grips with it all. I'd never run an association before, and we had COVID, and the country got closed down overnight. We had time to go and buy a set of dumbbells to do some exercise at home, and that was about it. And hope that the wine shop had plenty of stocks. So the question that was being asked of us at the time, we have 3 key income streams. We have events, we have learning and development. At that time, May had never run a digital event before. And so
Not even a Zoom meeting.
no webinars, no nothing. No
Wow.
online learning, squat. So our skill set was 0. So I was asked, who are you going to make redundant? How are you going to cut costs? And I said, that's the wrong question to ask. I said, the question to ask is, how can we add value to members? We still have one income stream, which is membership. How are we going to support our members who are shitting themselves at home? So I came up with this idea because I've got an education background. What if we can do something that's just going to blow people away? And, that people go, shit, how'd they think of that? How'd they make that happen? So at the time, I didn't even know Mark Ritson. I hadn't been working in marketing for a while. I'd been in education, and everyone told me he was the bee's knees. And so I cold called him, and I identified the thing that we owned that he would like to get access to, and that was our members. So I sent him a little note on LinkedIn. How'd you like to get in contact with every New Zealand marketer? I've got this really shit hot idea on how we can do it. His reply back to me was, oh, well, I'm doing fuck all in Tasmania at the moment. Let's talk. So we got together. He said, I'll fund it.
Mm.
That's how much he liked the idea. And I said, oh, we'll pay you back. So we did it as a partnership. So he got right into it, and they ran it in Australia as well. The income we generated for that covered the four months of lost income we had from L&D and from the events that we would have run. And we got it to market in 5 days.
5 days. That's impressive.
Yeah.
The book talks about differentiation. Why does that earn a place in the decision framework? A lot of people would argue that not making a decision or deciding to stay still is a choice, maybe a passive one. And some people would argue that by not just doing it, it means that they potentially save a lot of time and cost that would have gone into an idea that maybe would have failed in the end.
Indecisiveness is a decision. It's just usually a dumb one. And I mean, if you go through the decision tree that I said, at every point along the way, if the answer is no, then go back and make a different decision. Differentiation is how you get noticed. And that's, will it provide a distinct experience? Because if you're doing that, you've got a much better chance of being noticed. There's a really good example of this is the One New Zealand story. I, like a lot of people, when it came out, One New Zealand, we had TV1, I confess I did go, well, why the fuck are they doing this? It seemed real, I didn't get it, and I think a lot of people didn't get it. But they did one of the smartest things I've seen a brand, and I credit to Jason Paris because he's an ex-marketer and he's a CEO, and I guarantee you that if the One New Zealand CEO had been an accountant or a lawyer or someone of that ilk, it would never have happened. And before they were Vodafone New Zealand was really a faceless corporate entity from overseas. No one knew who they were. And I don't know who came up with it, but, I know the guys there reasonably well. And they just came up with this idea of, hey, we're getting all these complaints of people like me, the uninformed, giving them criticism. And so all they did was that one of the team members would sit on the chair and read out the complaints. And the complaints were, they would be going, oh, that one hurts, but what it did, it humanized the brand. It was incredibly clever because before they had this big corporate entity that no one knew about. I mean, oh, is it staffed by all these wallies from Amsterdam or whatever it may be? But suddenly you had one New Zealand, and they're all local Kiwis wanting to
Mm.
do the best job ever, and reading it going, "Oh, we've got feelings too, guys. You know, you're sending us all this really crappy feedback, and hey, we're just trying to do the best job we are, and we've brought this all together because we are committed to New Zealand." Brilliant masterstroke, and I think it helped differentiate them and give people what brand in New Zealand has ever gone public with all their criticism. I mean, that was it was a coup. It
It's
was an
brave.
absolute coup. I mean,
Mm.
and brilliant, and it gave a different experience. To your point before, sometimes, your decision, you might go through your decision tree, and your decision tree might be, do we wait and give this 6 months, or do we do it, go sod it, just do it now? And that all comes back to number 2 in my decision tree, which is research the fuck out of it. Because if you haven't done that, then how can you actually make that decision? If you're making an uninformed decision, that's for muppets, it's for idiots. And how can you be really strong in your opinion of what you're doing if you don't know the information in front of you?
So the title of the book should really be Sod It, Just Do It Once You've Done Your Research?
Once you've done my sod it, just do it once you've been through my decision tree, because research the fuck out of it, Ben, is only step 2 of 7 steps. And there's a lot more steps that's involved. That's just helping you make an informed decision, you
So
know.
one brand that didn't follow your steps, they just did it before going through step 2 was Gap, who put
Yes.
in a new logo, and it all went very wrong because a new marketer wanted to make their mark. What did Gap get wrong? What steps did they not follow? They obviously sod it, just did it, but they didn't do it right.
The biggest danger to any brand is a new head of marketing or CMO, because the real credibility for a brand is consistency. And if you have consistency in a brand, people understand the touch points. The worst thing is going in and getting your favorite biscuits. You can't find them. Why can't you find them? Because they've just been repackaged.
Yeah, they're still
They're,
there on the
they're
shelf. You just
still there.
can't see them.
Shit, they've got a new brand manager, I say, or a new marketing equity of their brand, and actually talk to, maybe they did talk to some, but to different customers, but maybe they asked the wrong questions. Because the questions do need to be quite specific. I make it sound relatively straightforward in here, but it is an in-depth process. Right across the board, whatever you're doing, you really do need to be in depth. And it comes back to part 1. Make sure you're actually asking the right questions, so you know what the decisions are, that you're scoping it, so you know when you do research that you're actually researching the right things. And I think in Gap's case, they went, "Oh, this looks really cool. Doesn't it look great?" And they really didn't give enough consideration to what their customers recognize. Walking through a mall, they look for the big blue square. Where's the big blue square? Have they gone out of business? Shit, we better put that back after a week.
And there's a couple of brands that have done that more recently, Cracker Barrel being one that had to do a bit of a U-turn. Jaguar also, who haven't
Jaguar.
done a U-turn, but what do you have any views on those brands?
I don't know Cracker Barrel, sorry, but I do know Jaguar. And I think my point of view on Jaguar, because since I was 6 years old, I'd always wanted to own a Jaguar, because my uncle had one in British racing green with the
Mm,
big the
gorgeous.
symbol, and symbol of the Jag, brown leather inside, beautiful walnut. We have the 4 Ps of marketing, and especially in the AI age now, I have a slightly different take on the 4 Ps. I think the 4 Ps are product, 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 then product. Because if you don't get the product right, AI, and Shane Evans and I were having this discussion yesterday, we were saying a lot of the pricing models and the placement models and getting the brand right are the 2 things that marketers are really going to have to concentrate on. Jaguar screwed up because they got the product wrong, in my opinion.
Mm.
I think they lost their legacy of what they were famous for. They took the the Jaguar off the front bonnet, and they said people would steal them, and they shit. Isn't that wonderful that
Mhm.
your brand is so strong that people want to steal them? Why don't you actually have a little insurance policy within when you sell the new one? If your Jaguar gets stolen and you can prove it, we will give you up to two new one because we know how strong our brand is, and we're sorry that we put you in this problem. They've lost the leather, they've lost the finishing. They made the finishing inside feel to me more like a good Toyota or something, rather than that beautiful essence of what Jaguar used to be. I was in a car dealership the other day and saw a 2006 Jag convertible with that still had all the walnut and it was. I sat in there and went, oh, isn't that nice? You sit in an E series now. Oh yeah, that's all right. You know,
Mm.
feels like every other car that I sit in. Whereas the 2006 I sat in there. So I believe that's where they've gone wrong. They rebranded. They really. I mean, it's easy for an outsider to say, and they'd probably kick me up the bum for saying it, but that they haven't understood their brand equity and the consistency that they had of this beautiful car out of England. And yes, they were losing money and all that sort of thing. But the decision I would have been looking at is how can we retain their equity and actually still make volume?
Agreed. You
Yeah.
mentioned that in the age of AI, the 4 Ps of marketing are product, 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 and product. How does that translate to a service business? And obviously, service is the product in that business. But what are your views on services businesses and how they compete in the 4 Ps?
Well, I think it's actually, if anything, it's even more crucial, Ben, because you've got to work out what your service is. And a lot of the time with the service, some service industries, they go, oh, this is our core service. And then they don't look at all the touch points that are around that service and what happens afterwards, how they treat customers after they've provided that service. What's the added value that we can provide within our service after the service that will get them back to come a second time. And I think that's why I say the 4 Ps are all product, because if you haven't got those right, the other 3 Ps are nebulous. They're a waste of time. And Parnell's quite a tough little market for food shops and things. And I see ones that come up and I see they haven't got their product right within there, and they close down within 6 months, which is really upsetting because we'd love them to be successful, but they haven't got the product right. They haven't understood the local market and things. And that's why with the product, you don't just go sod it, just do it. You do go through that 7 steps and go through and really say, have we really got this nailed before we launch it? And then, as you probably know, I tinker a lot with things. I agonized over every page in the book, what it looked like, so I could get my product right.
Are you saying that with a services business, the product is the result at the end of the service? Or what are you saying is the product that the
Well, the
service business
product
has to get right?
the product is what the customer is paying for. So it is the array of services that you do, and some of the times, within that is often the brand. So a company might employ KPMG to do their audit, for argument's sake. So the audit is their whole product. That's the core of their product. But their product is also that in the annual report, they can say to their stakeholders, "Oh, we had the audit done by KPMG." That's part of their product. So it's saying, hey, we're a credible company, and actually we're a credible company that can afford KPMG to do our audit. Then the other parts of that from KPMG is, oh, how can we then extend them into other services? So for me, product is, it's very simple. I think now with phones, like a Samsung, the product for Samsung, you would say it's a phone, but a phone is no longer just a phone. It's a myriad of things that Samsung pull together as part of their overall product offering. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. you know.
So the Marketing Association recently turned 50, and
Yes.
as a part of that, you pulled together 120 years of
I
New
know,
Zealand advertising.
50 years, and I pulled together 120 ads over the last 50 years.
You concluded that something happened around 2010 where New Zealand lost its way in marketing and it lost its nerve. What happened around that time?
It's not that it lost its way in marketing, it lost its way in advertising. Advertising is just with if Mark Ritson was talking to you in the 4 Ps as part of the 4th P of marketing promotion. The advertising, I believe, got very safe. One theory I have is there was too many accountants as CEOs. But also, it was the time when social media was taking off, and suddenly people became very risk averse. It could go viral. If someone doesn't like it, they could go viral and they could kill our product, la di la. I think it was late 90s, early 2000s. We had the first advertising soap, with the Anchor family. I always found that a little bit like wallpaper, but it was very successful. A lot of people liked that. So other people went, oh, well, the safe route is that if we give these heartwarming stories. And what happened was the cheekiness that we had in the 90s and the 2000s was lost. People became too scared to do it. And the things like budgie smugglers with tip top, togs, 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 undies, undies, undies,
Brilliant.
and things like bugger and
Mm.
the great LMP ads, about stubbies, all of those things. I think it wasn't the agencies, it was clients. Clients just weren't briefing, give me another bugger, give me another, budgie smugglers.
We're just trying to be too safe.
They've been safe, and I think that stopped them being noticed. I remember Frankie Coulter saying when I was back in Scotland and England back in the 90s, he said all the reels would have all these really funny New Zealand advertisements, and then they stopped appearing. I think a lot of it was around that risk-averse area, and I think because of the rise of social media created that risk-averseness. I was very pleased to see last year herpes
Mm.
and motion sickness make New Zealand the best place in the world to have herpes. Absolutely brilliant, groundbreaking, such huge risk that they took. I
And they
mean,
won Lions for it.
they were probably, I'm not sure how many lions that Bugger won for Toyota, but I think it might be the most successful New Zealand campaign of all time. The Buck Shelford one for me is one of the funniest ads I've seen in ages. And the other big thing with the people that took these risks, they usually ended up or they were number one. So if you take a risk, yeah, you've got a good chance.
So sometimes brands get it wrong, and this is probably again because they haven't followed the process. Bud Light is an
Oh yeah.
example that where they didn't they didn't pass the common sense test. And I mean Bud Light is tricky because it was very controversial. And the issue that I saw with Bud Light is they made a decision without doing the research. But the other mistake they made is they backpedaled really quickly. So they tried to be inclusive. They pissed a whole lot of people off, and then they reversed again and pissed everyone else off. So not only did they piss off their existing customer base, they also pissed off the new customer base that they were trying to get friendly with. Tell me about your thoughts on the Bud Light
Well, I
issue.
mean, they were a classic case of, if you want to learn how to alienate an audience, then they're the classic case. And step 6 of my decision process is the greatest contribution Australia has made to the business world, and it's called the pub test. And it's very relevant for this particular brand because the pub test is that if I went into a pub and I discussed my idea with some people over a beer or a wine or whatever, would they get it? With the Bud Light, what they were trying to do was probably a really admirable thing, but they just forgot about what their core audience was all about. In this case, they hadn't really thought through what the worst case of what was happening. And if they had thought that through, they would never have done it, because the worst case is so much worse. And they actually gave it to an influencer who didn't even drink beer.
I can also imagine being a fly on the wall in that meeting room, and I can see the marketing team making the case for it as well. And this is where you get death of ideas or death of innovation by consensus.
Consensus.
But surely you can see how that decision was made.
Thomas Barter was here last year, and he said the biggest hindrance for innovation in companies is that people are scared to stick their head up over the parapet. And I think that was probably a case there where you had people in the room where they had a manager who was hot on the idea, where they probably went, a bit dumb, isn't it? And they were too scared to stick their head up and say something. And I think that's often the problem, and that's a cultural problem within organizations where people are afraid to they're afraid to voice their opinion. And again, it comes back that tall poppy syndrome. If you stick your head up, hey, it's going to be chopped off. And as we know, New Zealand's very good at that. So in this particular case, I think there was probably a combination of factors, but if they'd really thought about it hard and asked those simple questions, what's the best that can happen? What's the worst that can happen? The worst was so much worse than anything positive that would. And if you put it through a commercial lens in terms of how many more beers we'd sell by doing this, if you were being quite ruthless, I mean, it would never have passed.
So let's end on a high. There are
Yeah.
brands that get it right all the time. And one of my favorite examples in your book is Pals. And
Yes.
Pals is not a beer, it's a
It's an RTD.
RTD.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pals is an amazing success story. How did Pals follow your process, and
Well,
how did they become
well,
successful?
well, I wish I could claim that they did follow my process.
Well, hopefully they did follow a type of
Yeah,
process that
well, I
was
think
similar to yours.
I think they did, and I know Matt, who's the one of the founders, because I play golf with him now and again. And from what he said to me, it was basically a bunch of the boys in Mount Maunganui, and they sat down and they had this idea, and they just the thing that they have done that is incredibly strong. They have been true to their brand with absolutely everything they do. They've they've done things like they understand color coding. They might not remember the flavor, but I like the yellow one. I
I
like
love the pink one.
Yeah, I love the pink one. I love the red one. And
Mhm.
I think they stick to a process of only releasing a couple of new flavors and things. They adapted when they needed to, to get supermarket space, to get their brand into supermarkets by making zero alcohol. I know when they did the new tequila one, Matt was telling me the agonizing process they went through to get the best quality tequila. So, if you go back to a classic marketing point of view, they agonize over their product, but they're true to their brand and everything that they do. And also, in terms of how they promote it with raves and all stuff that's way too young for me, Ben. They really have just done an absolutely fabulous job of starting it from going, hey guys, let's just go and do this. And then once they decided that they got some success, they kept to the origins of their success. They kept to what has made us successful, and they've just kept building on that. I always remember seeing the orientation week in Otago, and suddenly 3 or 4 young girls jumping up behind the announcers and had cases of pals with them. That's when you know that you've done a great job with your brand, and those boys I take my hats off. I admire them. I wish I'd had the guts to do what they did at that age.
Is there something that you're seeing within organizations at the moment that they're putting off? Is there a decision or a topic that organizations are really struggling with and they need to just do it?
Yeah, I think the big one at the moment for a lot of organizations is the elephant in the room, which is AI. And they really need to make the decision to integrate it within their operation rather than it just being a bolt on. And also to actually look at where does this fit for us right now? And and I think part of the problem for that is that the technology is just changing so quickly. And I think people also just need to get off their high horse as well. Like on the whole content thing. I was talking to Steve Ballantyne, who is exceptionally good with AI, and we're talking about examples of people go, oh, should they know that that's AI content? Well, usually you can tell. But if you took that same rationale to other things, should it, when announcers are on TV, tell their viewers that they're sitting in front of a green screen? Should all the magazines and food shots actually say, well, we've actually photoshopped that? If you look through over the years, technology has changed what we can do. And I always love the example of the printing press, that the printing press changed the way people communicated back in the 1600s, rather than having to agonizingly write out 100 copies, suddenly they could print them. That changed the way we could communicate. So did radio, so did TV. AI is a technology that's an efficiency tool, and all these technologies have been about efficiency. And what I would argue with, the AI and what companies aren't seeing is that actually where they need the training is in critical thinking and decision making. It's often not in the AI itself, because anyone can feed prompts into AI and it's shit in, shit out. And it's having the ability to actually understand and critically think of how you can use that. Take my example with Gunnosaurus. No AI would ever have come up with that left field idea and then said, oh, let's make it into a English David Attenborough style documentary. I had the idea. Steve had the ability and the nous to actually bring it to life via technology. In the old days, to do something like that would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now we can do it. If you're skilled enough, you can do it. And that's the other thing people don't realize about AI, is actually they need to have people who are skilled technicians. If you're wanting to get the high end, you can use it for a lot of things, but you've got to be able to critically think. But the thing that companies are putting off is actually saying, integrating it, and how can it make us more efficient so we can spend more time. And this was part of the debate I was having not debate, but discussion I was having with Shane. I said, AI is going to do all that, but the human brain is going to have to make those decisions on getting the product right, getting the brand right. So we can do all the media via AI, but that creative spark, the thing that's going to connect people, comes from here.
So if our listeners want to get a copy of your book, how do they get a copy?
At the moment, we've got a very original URL address, hub.soditjustdoit.com. And if they come to the section buy the book, they can get an ebook from there. They can get a signed copy from me on there, or they can go to Amazon. The printed copy off there, because of the way the things work, the only way I could put a printed copy on there was to do the inside in black and white. So it's nowhere as nice as the original. I've done a deal with Nationwide Books, and it's being sold into bookstores and things from next month.
And are
So,
we
sorry,
going to get an Audible or a voice
yes,
version for
yeah.
people
Well,
that like
I
to
think,
listen?
as I said to you, Ben, I need a nice flash microphone like yours to come on and actually do it. Everyone said, John, you cannot get someone else to voice
No.
it.
It must be you, John. You can't have someone
Yeah,
else. Well, you're
yeah.
welcome to come and use the Ben on Brand studio if you
Oh,
need
look,
to.
well, I would love to do that.
John, thanks for coming on.
My absolute pleasure. If you buy a copy, I've got a little section there. Ask John, ask me any question you like, and I will always give you a blunt, honest answer. So, yeah.
Love it. Thanks,
Righty.
John.
Thank you, mate. Cheers.
If you're not subscribed to Bet on Brand, this is a time. Every episode has a conversation with someone who has built something real and will say exactly how. Subscribe wherever you listen, and I'll see you next week.